Today is January 14th, 2014, and we're going to be discussing the brief history of Franklin, Pennsylvania, in which I reside, and also my church, the Atlantic Avenue United Brethren Church, which happens to be located here in Franklin, Pennsylvania. Franklin sits at the center of Venango County in Pennsylvania, which is roughly 30 miles from the Ohio border. And Franklin is in a part of a historical region known as the oil region, or the valley that changed the world, because of the rich oil history that our area boasts. Franklin was incorporated and plated in around the year of 1795, when after a brief settlement was started in the 1740s. Franklin, throughout the years, has grown in population due to the increase in industry, and most notably the oil industry. And around the year 1930, Franklin's population boasted roughly 10,000 individuals. During that time, however, Franklin and Oil City, which is roughly 8 miles apart from Franklin, was where Pennzoil and Quaker State Corporation were located at up until about the mid-1990s. So during those decades between 1930 and about 1990, the populations were between 10,000, between 10 and 9,000, fluctuating as those decades had gone on. It dropped down to about 8,100 around the 1980 decade, and after that it kept slowly declining. In the 1990s, our population was around 7,300, and at the most latest census data, we're at around 6,600 people. So Franklin is a very old town. We were incorporated, like I said, around 1795, and around that time we had a lot of people moving into the area because of the oil discovery in Titusville, Pennsylvania, which is roughly 19 miles north of Franklin, by Colonel Edwin Drake, who discovered the first petroleum oil patch in the United States of America. And from that time forth, oil booms have started in this area, and the population had increased over time. So with that, we had all these people coming into the area to work for Mr. Drake, and who went on to become successful people and millionaires. And what that meant was, in Franklin, we had a lot of what we call oil money. A lot of oil money homes, a lot of Victorian-style homes that are very rich in history, very beautiful, very elaborate Victorian-style houses. And this area grew because of that, and it has stayed that way because of that time. And because of that, all those people who came in were looking for churches, so they started churches. Right now, Franklin boasts roughly, in our city zip code, around 32 churches of various denominations. In the city itself, there's an Episcopal church and a Catholic church, along with many Presbyterian and Methodist churches. Like I had stated, the United Brethren Church here in downtown Franklin is one of two in our area. We have another one which is roughly about 6 miles apart from our current location, and that is the Victory Heights United Brethren Church. So we're very fortunate to have two UB churches within our small little area. Now, during those big periods of population, most of these churches were being built. They're very old historical churches. The Episcopal church we have here in Franklin is in the Guinness Book of World Records because of its Tiffany stained glass that it has in its sanctuary. They have the largest Tiffany windows and display in the world. So that's a big attraction for a lot of people when they come into Franklin during our Apple Fest times. Apple Fest is a local festival that we have every year, which we draw in about 100,000 people in a weekend, where we have all kinds of goodies to eat, crafts and vendors and shows and tours of the city. So that's one big economic boost we have. But during that time, we go around and people can take tours of the churches and get a good brief history of Franklin and our rich oil history that we have. Since those days of Pennzoil and Quaker State, when they had moved their headquarters out of Oil City, which, like I said, is 8 miles north of Franklin, the populations of both Oil City and Franklin have declined dramatically, and thus the church populations have declined as well. which is obviously going to happen when there's such a decline in population. Now, during those rich days, the churches were being built, like I said, they're very elaborate, very big, very large, very pretty structures. And a lot of rich people had attended those at one time, so they left a lot of money to these older churches. Donations that they'd made, trusts were set up in their names, wills were given to the churches, and a lot of investments had taken place. And these churches are still able to keep their doors open because of the old money that has been left to them for the decades that they were in a booming population. Like I said, Atlantic Avenue is part of the United Brethren denomination, which is located in Huntington, Indiana. And our church population is around 600 to 700 currently, and we have steadily grown over the decades. And now I'm going to give you a little bit of a snapshot of Atlantic Avenue and our history over the decades. Atlantic Avenue was started in 1932 by Reverend Arthur Baker. He began a mission in a storefront located on Grant Street in Franklin. Grant Street parallels Atlantic Avenue, where we are at right now. On April 9th, 1935, this independent mission group became an organized United Brethren in Christ Church. The new church had 14 founding members at that time. In July of 1935, a lot was purchased at 158 Atlantic Avenue. The Polk Tabernacle was purchased and relocated to Atlantic Avenue. Now, Polk is a little borough outside of Franklin, roughly 6 miles, and an old structure was uplifted off its foundation and brought into downtown Franklin, where Atlantic Avenue was started. It was during the war years, in the 1940s, when Reverend H.G. Conrad was the pastor, that the property at 160 Atlantic Avenue was purchased. And Reverend Conrad oversaw the building of a new church building. When the new church was completed, the old Polk Tabernacle was torn down. Now, that was the start of the tremendous building and growth that Atlantic Avenue has experienced since 1932. And like I said, during the 1930s, Franklin's population was roughly 10,000 individuals. So there was a need, and a need was met, and a church was built. It was under the direction of Reverend Howard Snow in the late 1970s when an addition was added to both the front and rear of the original building. During this time, some major remodeling occurred throughout the remainder of the building as well. Fast forward to 1999, under the leadership of Reverend Gary Small, the Family Center, which is our large gymnasium, has a kitchen, a loft for our youth, classrooms in the basement. Building was constructed. This building was built by the members of the church in 1999. I happened to be able to give a lot of time on that project as a 18-year-old in high school, and it was one of those projects that I've kept near and dear to my heart, because it was at that time where I felt God was calling me into ministry at that point in time in my life. And because of the Family Center, it has enabled the church to expand its ministry to the community in a great way. Because of the Family Center, we're able to host various activities throughout the year at the church, which we do not charge for. We have American Red Cross blood drives every Friday of the month, first Friday of the month. We've been doing that for the last few years. We have wedding receptions that we allow family members of the church to use. We have funeral dinners, you name it, we do it. We also put on a dinner theater presentation every spring, and it's free of charge to the community. We put on a full-fledged play that we design, we build a set, and we put on a 5-night show with a full meal in that Family Center. The membership of the church has grown steadily since those founding 14 members started the church in the 1930s. And the church had grown over the last few decades. From 1986 to 1991, under the leadership of Reverend David Flick, a spiritual revival broke out, and the attendance doubled at that point in time. From 1986 to 1991, the attendance averaged around 80 people. After that revival, the church population had doubled to 160. And over the next 15 years, the attendance has grown from that 160 just to where we're at now, to about 600 to 700 in weekly attendance. Until 1990, the staff of the church consisted of just one senior pastor and a volunteer, a ministry volunteer. And that person, like I said, was a volunteer position. She was not paid. That all changed in 1990 when our full-time ministry assistant was hired and she was added on to the staff of the church. Then in 1995, the year I was a 15-year-old sophomore in high school, the church took an enormous step and hired a full-time associate / youth / worship pastor. And that man was very instrumental in changing my life and where I'm at today. The needs of a growing congregation and the desire to fulfill the Great Commission have increased the need for additional staff and space. Currently, the church boasts 5 pastors. We have a senior lead pastor, an associate business management pastor. We have a worship pastor, 2 youth pastors as well. And we also have a business manager now. We have a preschool director and a preschool assistant, as well as ministry assistant, like I stated before. And we have a few other auxiliary staff helping our children's director out. So our full-time employment went from 1 to around 12 individuals who are either full-time or part-time individuals within the church. Now, as our attendance in the county and the city of Franklin have declined, the attendance in Atlantic Avenue Church has increased, thankfully, over the last 2 decades that Pastor Gary Small has been at the helm of the church. With the drop in attendance within our community, our church has grown, like I stated, and that's a God thing. And Franklin is on a cliff right now with a possible further decline in our business sector. We may be losing a very prominent player in the coal industry who manufactures mining machinery within our area, and they've been a part of our community since the 1900s. And with the decline in coal and all the regulations that are being put onto the coal industry, they have suffered greatly. And so we're on that teetering edge again of a population decline if Joy Mining decides to uproot and close its doors and consolidate elsewhere. But Atlantic Avenue has sustained, all these declines that we've had in the few years, in the few short years we've been around. Since 1932, it's not too long ago that our church was started. When you think about Franklin being started in the 1700s, so we saw a need in 1932 when the population of Franklin was roughly 10,000 people to have a church that reached out to all these new people who were moving into our area. A lot of immigrants from across the country and from overseas had decided to make Franklin their home. And the rich history that we have here has made Atlantic Avenue a big part of our community. And currently right now, Atlantic Avenue is the largest church within the city limits. There's another church down the road from us that has around a 400 to 500 attendance, and one outside of town that has around the same 400 or 500. But Franklin, or Atlantic Avenue, is definitely leading Franklin in those numbers, and it's been a God thing. And as the Lord has been moving, so has Atlantic Avenue been listening to that call and moving with Him. So the history of Franklin is rich, like I said, because of the oil industry that has been here for all these years. And it's not a big player anymore. It's, like I said, extinct. But we've been able to sustain these losses and move forward. So I hope this helps you get a little understanding of Atlantic Avenue a little bit more. Like I said, we have 700-ish we've been receiving on weekly attendance, and we're growing Go Guns, and we're starting another building campaign this spring, actually, and we're hoping to break ground on a new facility in 2015 because the church keeps growing. Families keep coming, and even though we're losing people in the community, people are flocking us, and because of the Lord has been working in a mighty, mighty way. So I hope this helps you get a better understanding of Franklin and Atlantic Avenue United Brethren Church. Have a good evening.